So I like criminal justice. I know a lot of stuff about it. It's a very interesting topic. It's why I studied in college. It's all the things. So I was watching YouTube and I came by this video that says the US justice system is rigged. Now, I disagree with that statement. So I wanted to actually make a thing where I react and break down what parts I disagree with and yaya from the video. This is made by Common Sense Soapbox. For those of you unaware, this channel is essentially a libertarian propaganda group, and I don't say that as an insult. I enjoy my good share of propaganda. Generally, they speak about economics and how us control over economics can be helpful, though today they branched out a touch, which is why I disagree. Let's get myself moved over and get started.
Since Ron's been in prison, it's really started to seem like there's no clear reason behind who gets charged with crimes and who doesn't anymore.
Alright, so that's kinda a reference to topical news article number 26. I'm not going to worry about actual political commentary for the moment just because that's not necessary. But the thing about who does and doesn't get charged, a big factor is if the prosecutor believes they'll win. See, if I have enough evidence to guarantee win, it looks very nice because then my charge to success rate gets really high. But if I don't have enough evidence, it's better to drop it. Right here, though, there's the political factor, which I think you can speculate on your own.
Boy, I know what you mean. That's always how it is, ain't it? People in power get a free pass while us little guys get hit with the whole book. Ow!
You're not wrong. A lot of this problem has to do with how much power prosecutors, and in general the entire Department of Justice, have to decide who to charge or not to charge with.
Yes, they do have a lot of power over who does and does not get charged. That is the discretion, and it's kind of inherent to the system. So what goes on is...
which kinds of crimes? The incentive...
So what goes on is you have the prosecutors and you have to figure out who gets charged with what. You cannot prosecute every crime reasonably. There is no proper way to make mandatory prosecution because that would not work out. So what happens is you get the prosecutor and they will mostly prosecute crimes that they believe they can win or they think are necessary to prosecute. That's why in some cases, I think New York, if I'm not mistaken, you'll see prosecutors mostly ignoring drug charges, and in other cases, say Texas, you'll find them enforcing it quite seriously. As a result, crimes kind of have a going rate of how bad you have to do the crime to have it followed through on. So I could steal probably 3 pumpkins and no one would bother with that. But if I stole, let's say, 3 Ferraris, I'm screwed over. It's a natural result of the limited resources in the judge system, the courts and whatnot. Courts are a ridiculously overworked industry, so there's no real way to enforce mandatory charging of any crimes.
Incentives in the entire justice system right now are shockingly bad.
What do you mean?
Well, for one thing, district attorneys are elected and even high-ranking DOJ officials are appointed by politicians. So everything they do is, at least to some degree, political. DAs usually pitch themselves to voters on the basis...
Okay, so yes, everything in the criminal justice degree is to some degree political. That is because to have a government, we have politics, and to have criminal justice, law, etc., we need the government. So that's a natural thing. That does not on its own make it a bad thing. Because we are voting and influencing this system, we have the full potential to make it start to lean in ways that favor the general population. For example, if you think that light crime policies are generally a good thing, and you vote towards that, that can happen where you live. I believe California works towards that, even though I really don't like California. Or if you want particularly high, tough on crime policies, you can vote towards that as well. There is the issue of corruption, and that is where you need to actually pay attention to the elections and not just do party alignment. I recommend keeping up with the primaries specifically. Those are the biggest deal, but just about any point, you can show a degree of influence on the process.
Of how many cases they win and how many bad guys they put away, but also on the basis of who they're prosecuting.
Darn right! If you're one of them important folk that get caught doing crimes, you might not even get prosecuted at all.
So that is the case, and that is the point where it's a big concern. Sometimes you have a thing where they will prosecute specific people and mostly use that as like a political movement thing. In a case that isn't as modern, there was a old Hollywood actor in like the early days when they were still having silent films called, it was Fatty something, I don't remember. And what happened with him was he got accused of a crime. He didn't actually do the thing, at least as far as I could tell. And he got his career screwed over because there was a prosecutor that believed that by prosecuting him, he would have a much better shot at future elections, future power bits, and it was a point of concern.
Well, poor old Florida man has to stay one step ahead of the law even if he never did anything half as bad.
That's true, but it gets worse. Prosecutors often have the power to decide which charges are brought against different people, and that matters a ton.
Yeah, aren't there mandatory minimum sentences for different kinds of crimes?
Yep, mandatory sentencing rules take power away from judges and...
Okay, taking power away from judges does not actually change the thing where you have the risk of politics. See, what happens is judges, depending on where you live, might even be elected. I live in Texas, they're elected here, and that does lead to corruption too. But more than that, judges are also appointed. They are equally political figures compared to mandatory sentences. Now, mandatory sentences are also meant to be a controlling factor for the potential of judges letting people off too light for certain crimes, which is unfortunate because it's not really a effective method because, like is shown right here, what happens is you end up plea bargaining down.
give it to prosecutors who often use the threat of huge charges to scare defendants into taking plea deals instead of going to trial.
Even though the right to a trial's in our Constitution.
Okay, so that's a very big thing, the plea deals. People are often... I find there's a lot of people who find plea deals this, like, horrible setup. Plea deals make the entire system much more efficient. So people often misrepresent this. Prosecutors are a overworked group the same way just about everything in the criminal justice system is overworked. There's not a ton of people working in it. So what happens with plea deals is you give them the opportunity to get a lighter sentence in exchange for cooperation. They present it right here as if you're being denied a constitutional right, which is just wrong, because what's happening is you are waiving that right in exchange for leniency. There does run the risk sometimes of whenever you refuse a plea deal, you get a way harsher sentence than you would otherwise. But if you're refusing the plea deal, odds are you're either innocent or you're pushing it all the way to the limit.
Plus, the fact that the government has essentially unlimited resources to pursue court cases and most citizens don't.
That's also wrong. The government does not have unlimited resources to pursue court cases. There's a lot of cases that aren't tried because the court system is highly backed up. There is not enough resources to pursue enough of them. And it's also presenting as if the average person can't afford a lawyer, which is sometimes true, yes, but we are also guaranteed a lawyer by a Supreme Court ruling some time ago, so you will get a court-appointed lawyer, also an overworked group, and I would like it if they could get more funding, because that is an issue that happens, but it's not as if you're going in with no defenses. Additionally, there's a common misconception that defending yourself in court leaves you screwed over. They actually have close to the same success rate when it comes to going to trial if you defend yourself. And you have, if you are stuck in prison during the wait time, a guarantee to 10 hours, I believe, in a law library. And if you aren't in prison, if you made bail or whatever, you get access to the internet. You have a lot of resources available to you in addition to charities and other groups. Also in prison, and this is a fairly recent development, so I don't know how widespread it is, there are some prisons that get tablets for their prisoners. This is generally a way to charge them for movies and stuff and make the system a little more profitable. But a big thing that happens is they get legal apps and legal references onto those tablets, making it more searchable, more accessible. That's actually one of the biggest things technology does that I love. It is the fact that right now, the law is easy to find, easy to read, easy to research than it ever has been before.
Makes the whole system pretty imbalanced in favor of the prosecution. At this point, only about 5% of criminal cases are actually tried before a jury of the defendant's peers.
So that is true, but once again, plea deals, you're getting the leniency in exchange for that. Additionally, most stuff that charges are brought to, the person's guilty. Like I said, the prosecutors are only going to pursue something if they have a good amount of evidence. And the police are probably not going to arrest you if they do not have a good amount of evidence. So what happens is you go in tiers. You go, here's the police. They can figure out if you're guilty or not. They rarely arrest you if you're not guilty. And then you go up one layer, and then you get the prosecutors, and they're not going to pursue something if they know they're going to lose. And then you get the trial.
I guess this all means that if you're poor and have no special connections to anyone in power, or if the DOJ really doesn't like you, you get the hammer.
And once again, that kind of misrepresents, because you do get public defendants and you do have access to the law. You are in a very good spot to be tried in the modern day, as long as you're able to focus and think clearly.
If you do happen to have connections, you might not get charged with anything at all.
I'm not going to comment on the politics at the moment. That is something that does run the risk. Once again, it's a natural result of having to have politics intertwined with the criminal justice system. But it is also possible that once you have the powers flip and you have a different size prosecutor, you might prosecute then. It gets a little interesting and wishy-washy, but it does not mean that the system as a whole is rigged.
Who are you again? Where am I? In fact, you might be able to sell your artwork for millions. Look at you.
So there really is a two-tiered justice system in America?
I wish it wasn't the case, but yeah.
No, you still get to be tried before a jury of your peers. You have good access to the law. You have the ability to defend yourself. Everyone gets that. If you're not charged, that can be fortunate for certain people, but not every crime can be charged. That's naturally a part of the thing. That does not mean it's two-tiered and that rich people are constantly getting off of crime.
I think so.
If only my daddy was a politician. The wrong things Florida man would have done did.